Catching up with Wayne Paterson this morning from Anteris. Wayne, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good to be speaking, Wayne. You've just held your AGM in Australia. You updated the market on the 12-month data here for the first two groups of patients. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. So, we had the AGM. Obviously, that's a yearly event. And I was obviously very happy that the timing of the AGM coincided with the second group of patients crossing over 12 months. 12 months is an important milestone in any study, certainly, but in this kind of study for sure, because you really get a good flavor for whether that patient has had a sustainable improvement, whether they're going backwards, whether they're going forwards. So we were able to present the first two cohorts at the 12-month period. And of course, the data is very consistent. We're excited by that. The physicians are excited by that. And we're on every podium, as you can imagine, this year trying to present that data, or not trying, but presenting that data. And we're just getting incredible feedback because folks haven't seen this kind of results before with this kind of product. So we're really happy. We're getting, EOAs at the 2, which is in the normal range. We're getting those mean gradients under about 8, between 8 and 9, which is fantastic. And our index EOAs are greater than 1. So we're getting really just basically pre-disease normal results. It's stunning.
You've also presented the 48-hour data for the most recent cohort of 7 patients. How's that looking?
Yeah, no, it's looking fantastic again. And of course, we've just put out some more data. We can talk about that in a minute. But at the time of the AGM, I had really just done those patients. I basically had just come back myself from that to Australia. And we had the 48-hour data really pulled together literally the 24 hours before the AGM. So I was really getting on top of it. What was fantastic is that the 48-hour data was the best data we've seen so far. So that's cohort 3, our most recent group. And it was really stunning. We're getting EOAs now below 8 or even 7 on some of these patients. So that is incredible. And of course, doctors were very excited. And I think during the AGM, I was fortunate enough to play an interview that I did with Dr. Rebecca Hahn, who is #1 in the world. She wrote all the seminal paper on valves, valve openings and closings and so on. And she actually came on that particular visit and did the scans and the echoes for us, which we're very, very grateful for her, very privileged for that matter. And the results is talking to her. She's very articulate in how she talks about how differentiated these clinical results are on this particular product relative to what's available, and certainly the clinical benefits that you see with our product moving forward.
And as you mentioned, just yesterday, you announced the 30-day data on the most recent group of patients. Give us a bit more detail here.
Next level. I mean, they came out of 48 hours really well. I mean, I was obviously there. They looked great. The results were great. They got even better at the 30-day mark, which, it can happen. It's fairly rare, but I mean, at 30 days, you see a fairly good indication of what you'll see for the next year or 5 years even. I mean, once you see 30 days, it's typically where you stay. We're getting to the mean gradient levels of around about 7. Again, EOA is at 2 or greater than 2 now. Index EOA is greater than 1. So it's no small point that you're getting these normalized pre-disease kind of blood pressures, which is a defining measurement of this disease. It's not some strange marker that no one's ever heard of. That's how they measure this disease, is mean gradients and EOAs. We've got the best in the business, and it's important to note that we are talking also about patients that are truly very difficult to treat. These are not typically patients would be in a study just because they have a lot of comorbidities. I explained this at the AGM. Their anatomy, their aortas have a lot of calcium. We had a couple there who had a bicuspid, type 1 bicuspid, which means instead of 3 leaflets, they have 2 because one's fused together with calcium. I mean, these are very difficult patients. You would treat them normally, you just wouldn't put them in a study because their data is going to not be fantastic. But even in these difficult to treat patients, if you match apples with apples on these smaller annulus, which is a lot of female patients, we are just to hell and gone in terms of our results relative to what's available in the market right now.
So your physicians must be getting fairly excited by the look of some of this data.
I mean, you'll see them on the podiums, and I'm sure if you've seen any of that video and hear them talking on interview, the AGM, I was also fortunate enough to interview Dr. Poon live from Australia, who is the only physician out of the US who has actually implanted a patient. And he talked very eloquently. He's one of the highest operators in Australia. Talked very eloquently about not only the data that we're seeing, but also the physicians that we work with in his universe and how they are at the highest level. So when you've got the people who matter, their opinions matter. In fact, they're probably the only opinions that matter, talking about this product on the podiums in terms of it's the next big thing. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of enthusiasm. It's very palpable. And above that, we get, frankly, a lot of people reaching out to us now, either clinically, so physicians who want to work with us, who want to work with this product, they're now hearing a lot about it. And frankly, a lot of folks from other companies who also want to join Anteris at the moment, which is kind of new. We didn't certainly have that before, but certainly a lot of folks out there in TVR land, I think, see the writing on the wall at this point.
Well, you've now got 20 patients. Is that enough to make any meaningful decisions on the product?
Yeah, for sure. This is very different to drug development. I think we talked about this before, but a medical device certainly requires less patients to prove the point versus a drug or a chemical. And really, you start to get to these numbers of 15, 20. We'll finish the year around about 45, I guess. Then there have been registrations for example, in Europe before the MDR process, where they were getting approvals on 30 patients, commercial approval. So it's certainly considered a number. Certainly a lot of the earlier TVR deals way back when were done on smaller patient numbers as well. But it's a device. Essentially, once that valve is placed in 5, 10, 15, 20 patients, the valve will do exactly the same thing that it always does, which is to open and close at a clinically relevant rate. So, from here on in, you are looking at data that will be consistently better. But the key issue to all of this is that our valve is a novel and unique design. This is the first-in-class biomimetic valve. We own the class. We own all of the IP. I just announced that a few weeks back. It's 2 lots of patents, particularly around the valve, with multiple claims inside those patents. So you get the result because of the valve design, and we own the valve design. So I think, it does build a very, very sustainable moat around the company. When you couple that with the adapt tissue, which also is highly protected by its IP and highly desirable because it's so amazing in terms of the data it has. You take the valve and, of course, the delivery system. There's a trifecta of innovation that is very, very high wall for competitors currently in the market to scale, and certainly anyone foolhardy enough to attempt to join the market at this point has just got too far to go to even attempt to have a product that's going to be viable.
So what do you see, Wayne, as being the clinical risks from here through to regulatory approval?
Yeah, it's a good question, Andrew. Thank you. I do get asked a lot by investors, and again, I think there's a little bit of parallel between a drug and a medical device in the minds of investors in terms of how they see the clinical risks. Clinical risk in drug development, I've done that my whole career globally. There are very big risks at phase 2, phase 3. And that's why drug companies, big ones where I worked, have a lot of drugs in their pipeline, because you have a lot of failures. And so it's a numbers game. In order to get 3 to market, you burn 15 along the way, and that's how it happens. Medical device is very different. Remember, we are in the biggest space in medtech. TVR is the biggest space, projected to be 10 billion. When you size the market with the actual patient number, it's far greater than that. And we really are the only game in town in terms of new entries that have any clinical relevance in this space at the moment. And so that in itself is very important. But the clinical risks along the way here, in terms of getting to registration, I guess, which is the question, are very, very, very low, particularly relative to the drug industry or maybe other companies that folks might be invested in that develop drugs. The device, once it's gotten through this stage of 10, 20 human patients, it is continuing to do what it will always do in the next 3,000 patients, which is to open and close. We've got a delivery system that lands the valve properly. We've got physicians who obviously know how to do that. And I mean quickly. The last patients, they were doing in 20, 25, 30 minutes, which is the same speed as the commercial product, or even quicker than some of the competitors out there. So this thing is ready to go. The risk of clinical failure is so insignificant, I couldn't put a percentage on it. There are certainly other things you might consider, but also with a device, if something should go wrong, it's very different again to a drug. Once a drug has an issue in a phase 3 study, you've got to put it on the shelf. It's done. If a device, for whatever reasons, has some issue, it's not binary. The engineers will tweak, will fix, will do whatever they need to do, and the study will continue on. So risk of clinical failure is extremely low. I said it at the AGM. Certainly with the data we've got now, this is definitely not a matter of if on this product. Every doctor says they want to use this. It's clinically relevant based on the data we've seen. It's certainly a very viable product alternative for patients in the future. This is just simply a matter of when at this point.
And so what are the big steps through to registration?
Yeah, so we've started our FDA clinical study here. Our EFS, for want of a better term, early feasibility study, has been underway, given that we've got 20 patients. We actually got 21 patients. One of those was compassionate use, so we don't include the data, who was a very, very sick patient who, in fact, did extremely well. I probably could have included that in the study, but didn't want to do that. I'm just happy that she's doing well. But, that study, the sites, the ethics committee approvals, all the things we have to go through for EFS are well and truly underway, and certainly we'll be on track to read that data out at the 30-day point at the TCT conference later this year. That's the plan. We're on schedule for that. And then we'll move into the pivotal study. Of course, there is a lot of interest and attention from our industry friends and colleagues constantly at this point, I would say, as this data just keeps coming now. Certainly it's drawn the attention of not only the physicians, of course, at the highest level, but as you can well imagine, certainly the folks who operate in our space as well.
Good to speak, Wayne. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Always appreciated.